Welcome to A Mile Deep, and today I have the immense pleasure of going a mile deep with Andrea Waltz. Welcome, Andrea.
Hey, Benjamin. It is so good to be with you.
Oh, honestly, Andrea is the co-author of the worldwide best-selling book, Go for No. Now, here's what I wanted to share before we dive into your story, Andrea. Go for No changed my life. It was such a revolutionary book for me. It was so profound. It was so game-changing, and it helped me so much with my sales, my mindset, the way that I pursued rejection and failure and all that sort of stuff. Because I remember when I first started in my fitness business, it was like sales was something that I struggled with at certain points when I wanted to make bigger sales. And reading the book really, really transformed the way I see sales and the way I even guide clients today with sales. So thank you so much for writing that.
I love hearing it. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a worldwide best-selling book. Like, how does it feel to have that? Like, that's a huge, accolade, isn't it?
Well, okay. So I have to be honest because you have to understand this took a long time. Like this book was a absolute grind. So we were so excited when this book first came out, and I don't know if you know the whole backstory. So do I have a couple minutes to tell you?
You absolutely do. Yeah, please do.
Okay.
Divulge.
Okay. So here we go. So we decide to self-publish, and this is back in the dinosaur age before Amazon really even existed. And we wrote the book. We got ourselves what they call an offset printer. So we created the book. We got somebody. We actually did the cover ourselves because we were like pretty new in business, and we were like, oh, we can just throw together a book cover. Like, how perfect does it need to be, right? No big deal. So we kind of did everything ourselves. We sent it off to the printer. We ordered 4,000 copies, and this is in 2001. And 2001, yeah, because we wrote it in 2000. And we sent out 500 copies to companies, VP of sales, heads of training, anybody that had a sales force that could possibly buy copies for their entire sales team. This was our vision. We're going to sell thousands of copies. And we send all these copies out and nothing. It's like crickets. We get nothing, no response. And we were devastated. We're like, oh my gosh, we thought this book was really good, right? But also, keep in mind, Benjamin, there's no social media. There's no Amazon. It's totally up to us to figure out how to get this out to the marketplace. So we struggled for years. We actually got one. We got one response was actually a letter from a company that said, yeah, we read the book and absolutely not. We're not recommending this to our people. We won't be buying copies. Basically, don't contact us again. It was hilarious. And
Wow.
how hard is it for a company to actually take the time to write you a rejection letter, right?
Yeah,
So
that's a real no.
it was a real no. So we're sitting there going oh my gosh, maybe we're wrong. But we thought, well, no, we think this book has legs. So we struggle for 5 years grinding. We had one company out of that mailing that we did order 50 books. So we struggle. Finally, 5 years into this process, we go to this conference and we're handing out Go for No's like candy. We're just here. We're trying to have people read it so that maybe they give it to somebody else and we could get the word out about the book. It's the only way we know how to market a book because we're totally on our own and there's no tools out there. And so we hand a book to this guy that I overhear is in sales, and we get a call a few days later from him, and he's like, hey, I want to talk to you guys about your book. I read it. Are you open-minded? And we said, yeah, we're totally open-minded. What tell us. And he's like, well, first of all, he goes, I've read every sales book there is in existence, and yours is one of the best. It's phenomenal. But you guys have probably, here's what he said next. Here's the open-minded part. He said, but you guys have the worst cover in the history of publishing. And we were like, really? Okay. He said, you need to change the cover. Hire a cover designer who knows what he's doing and change the cover. So we did. And that actually helped. That went a long way because the cover was that. It was just nothing special. It was just boring and did not look professional. So we changed the cover, and now we have this person who is telling us this is a great book. Go out, keep going, right? So then we go for another 5 years. getting the word out. Now Amazon, 2007, Amazon's finally in existence. We put it up on Amazon and we sell
that's when I saw that it was 2007. I thought that was the actual
yes,
original publish day, right?
Right. Yeah. So we struggle. So now, does it start selling right away? Absolutely not. No, we grind for another 3 years. And finally, on December 31st of 2010, we finally hit Amazon's sales and selling bestseller list. So we finally hit that list. And at that point, we're selling like a couple thousand books a month at that point.
Wow.
And we have been in that top list now, probably like the top 50 sales books ever since that happened. So for the last 14 years. So the first 10 years, I have to tell you, were not like a phenomenal success. It was a grind, just so we're clear.
I love that story. It's like it's your own pursuit of the rejection and the no. It kind of which galvanizes the experience of the book. Honestly, I think when I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, like it was such a simple. I like simple plans, like a simple plan, and I think that so many sales books that I'd read, like multi-step, there was so many like steps and processes. Like, I come from a consultative sales selling background, and like that's how I learned how to sell. And it was just like this simple plan, like go for the no. And obviously, I know that's what you teach, and there's so much depth and wisdom to that. But it was just like, just go for the no. And I think that is probably why so many people really resonate with the simple message. It's a simple message, but very, very wise, and a great deal of underpinning, maybe from your life. And so I just want to ask you, Andrea, what about you led to you writing Go for No? Like, why specifically did you write that book in the first place? Because that's why I really want to find out.
So when I was in college, I remember standing in the bookstore and seeing a book. And I had never been into self-help. Like, I wasn't even into that. And I remember seeing a book called The Aladdin Factor. And it basically, I remember it saying, like, it was marketed as like how to get everything in life you want by just being willing to ask. And I went like, that was really interesting. I had never considered that you really needed to like ask for what you wanted. And because I was such a people pleaser and never wanted to look like I was being pushy and never wanted anybody to think I was desperate or anything, that anytime I wanted anything from anybody, whether it was a favor or whether it was a sale or anything, it was like I kind of waited for the other person to take the lead. I was a very passive person. And when I saw that kind of opened my eyes, and I was like, that's really cool. And I loved that book. And it was like the first personal growth book I ever bought. A few years later, I meet Richard, and he tells me this Go for No story about this great sale that he had, where he learned from his mentor that he shouldn't stop until he hears the word no when you're working with a customer. He tells me this story. And then I have my second epiphany, and I'm like, makes so much sense. I get it. It's exactly like what I read a few years ago. But I don't know that I really put that into practice. But now I had this catchphrase, like, go for no. I get it. And I guess I just became obsessed with being someone and helping other people see that if you want to achieve anything in life, you've got to get over yourself, you've got to get over the fear, and you've got to be willing to ask and be willing to hear no. And I fell in love with it, Benjamin, because I needed it so desperately. Like, that's the message I needed to hear. And Richard will say the same thing. He says the same thing all the time. He says, if he was like this perfect salesperson, right, that had no flaws and that it was easy and that he could get yeses and he always had the exact words and all of that, he never could have written Go for No. If he himself didn't fear the word no, he never could have been that person, because he's really basing this the story off of himself. He never could have been the person that needed that lesson. And so both of us, Richard and I both together, I feel like we are the kind of the average person who has a fear of rejection. We are both type A perfectionist achievers, but also have a complex of people pleasing. So it's this horrible mashup, right? and so I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah, I can think I was, where it really benefited me was the little parts of where I noticed that I would sabotage sales in not wanting to get the no. So, for example, when I wouldn't follow up with someone, if I text someone or reached out to them and they didn't reply, I would take that as a no. That was a no in my world. Even though there wasn't a clarified no, that wasn't a no that they'd even said go away or, get lost. And actually, it's quite funny. Most of my guys in my tribe and my mastermind will say that they received 5 or 6 messages without a reply from me before they said yes. And it came from that thinking of yes lives in the land of no. And it's like, it was like, do you know what? I'm just going to keep serving. So you either tell me to get lost, no, or you die. And it's like, that was, I think, the biggest transformation in my own personal sales is actually and that was the biggest shift because I never really heard no. And I realized when I read the book, I was like, I never really actually hear a no from someone. I just get like a lack of response, or I get to think about it or something like that. And so I think that so many people had that same thing, is that they actually attribute other things that are not no to rejection. Is that, would you say you see a lot of that in your work?
100%. At 100%. Salespeople, we always see rejection where it's not necessarily a rejection, right? We interpret everything through the rejection lens. Oh, they're not getting back to me. It's a no, whatever. I actually love silence because I will tell you, when I send somebody a proposal or whatever and they get back to me right away, it's usually a no. So I'm actually kind of good with silence. I'm like, they're thinking about it. They're still thinking about it. But then too, if somebody doesn't get back to me right away, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to get my no and I'm going to make sure that they give it to me. Like, we're going to have this conversation because I want you to get that no. It'd be so great if everybody became better communicators though, and they became people who would tell others no, right? It's this whole thing. It's like, as salespeople, we want to get the no. We need the no so we can move on. As customers, they don't want to give us no because they feel bad, right? It's like, you don't want to tell somebody no. So it's this crazy dynamic. And it's what the other thing I've noticed is that salespeople also have a hard time saying no to things, right? Because they can empathize with that. And so oftentimes, like, people who take our Go for No challenge, they learn, like, hey, I should also be saying no, and I can do it in a way that is like empathetic and appropriate and kind. And hopefully, I believe in karma. Like, I try to tell people no all the time. At least give them an answer. At least say, like, hey, you know what? I appreciate this. It's not the right time for me. Or, you know what? I'm just not even the right client. I'm not your ideal client. I say that all the time. I promise you I'm not your ideal client here. I can just tell. But Benjamin, think of this. I mean, let's just look at this like from 30,000 feet, right? What if Coca-Cola said, and this is Go for No from a marketing standpoint, which completely applies. What if Coca-Cola was like, hey, we don't need to run ads anymore. Everybody gets it. They know who Coke is. Everybody's tried Coke at one point or another in their life. Let's just stop the billions of dollars in advertising. Also, Ford trucks. Everybody gets it. It's a Ford truck. It's good enough. Whatever. We don't need to advertise anymore. But no, these companies continue to advertise. And why? Because they know that repetition and being there when the customer is open-minded works. So at the beginning of a movie, Coke spends tons of money on these ads because they know, oh, look, it's the ideal customer at the right time. Let's show them this ad for Coke and we'll make a bunch of sales, and it works. So Go for No is the same thing. You need to look for the customers that are qualified. So be willing to hear no from those people that maybe aren't a good fit, but follow up with the people that are. The one-time thing, oh no, they get it. They understand my offer. They know all the nuances. They know everything. And no, that's not necessarily true. And also, they need to hear from you again. You need to be an advocate for what you sell. You need to stand behind it. Otherwise, if you don't follow up, they're thinking, oh, wow, well, they must not care that much about me. They must also maybe not believe in what they can do for me. They may not trust in their service enough to write me back, call me back, and go like, hey, I haven't heard from you. What do you think? Hey, I just want to mention to you that a lot of people think, that this program does X, Y, and Z, but I want you to know this also, add value. All of that stuff matters. These are all opportunities to go for no.
Yeah, I love that you said that. It's like, sometimes when someone is trying to get my business and they make it over, it's like, hey, we really want your business. I find that really attractive. I find that really like, hey, do you know what? You're actually making an effort to get my business here. And maybe it's because I'm a salesperson as well. Maybe it's because I've sold pretty much my whole life. But at the same time, it's like, if someone says to me, hey, listen, I really want your custom, I'm willing to work with you, instead of just like one reach out. And I think this is quite common in the new age of coaching. And I think this is like with social media, so many younger coaches and consultants and people coming through into the marketplace is they live in that like instant gratification age. They think they can cold direct message someone once, and then they're going to turn into a sale. And it just doesn't happen like that. And I think that so many people come into the coaching world, like especially people that have bought coaching from me about how to become a coach, or they're looking to get some success online. They come in, they think it's all about direct messaging people. They get they don't even get no's or rejection. They just get like silence because it's totally the wrong person. Mm-hmm. And they get really downhearted, and they haven't got that staying power to actually say, hey, listen, would you like to join an email list, or would you like to get nurtured, and move that person down the marketing fairway towards I would call it the hole. Like a really good metaphor for marketing sales years ago is it's like golf. Marketing moves the person down the fairway, and sales is the putter. And I didn't even realize that getting the no's along the way could be like that as well. Here's a question for you, Andrea. So in terms of rejection, so why do you think, because this is something that, and I struggle to sometimes articulate it well, because I see a no as a no, not a rejection. Why do you think there's so much pain that people don't say, oh, I don't like getting no's in sales. They don't ever say that. They always say, I can't cope with the rejection. So why do you think it's so painful for someone to have rejection?
Yeah. Well, I think it's two things, right? And I've really studied this a lot over the last 20 years. I've become, as I said, I've become obsessed with this idea. And there's two things, right? One is we're biologically wired not to get rejected. Like it is in our DNA to stay in the tribe, stay in the herd. Don't do anything so crazy that people are going to look at you and go like, you know what, you're out. Like you can go hunt and gather on your own, and we don't want you, and because you will surely die. And if you think about how your brain operates, it's like you get one no, your brain, and it happens to me too. It's like your brain will all of a sudden go on overdrive and go like, oh my gosh, you just got to know you're not going to make your car payment. You're not going to make your house payment. You're going to be living under the freeway overpass tomorrow. Like literally tomorrow, you better start planning for your death. And it's doing that all to keep you aware and safe and all of that. So you really have to shut your brain down and say, okay, thank you so much, but this is not helpful. It's just not true. You have to constantly question. So that's the one thing, is we're biologically wired. The second thing is most of us have had some kind of traumatic rejection experience early on in life. And I remember, and this hadn't occurred to me, Benjamin, until I was actually on a podcast with somebody recently, and I started thinking about this. I've had, like everybody, lots of rejections, right? Whether it was from a boy I liked or business type things or whatever. But I remember in high school, one particular rejection. I really wanted to join this club, and it was kind of a popular girls club. And it was made up of kind of the more wealthy girls, and they were, as I said, popular, and it was one of these like kind of social clubs, but also like charitable work and stuff like that. And you had to apply and you had to interview, and I don't remember my interview going particularly well, but I do remember going, and I was not in the cool kids club. Like, my parents were broke. We lived on the other side of the tracks, right? Okay, so you can relate.
Yeah, I can relate.
So I go one day to look at the sheet to see if I was accepted into this club, and my name wasn't on the list. So I did what a lot of people do when they get rejected. I got pretty mad. And instead of handling it the right way, I was like, you know what? You don't want me in your club? I'm not even going to come to school. I totally became a rebel. I just started hanging out with the rebellious kids. I skipped class all the time. My Spanish teacher my nickname was Truancy because I skipped class so much. I got caught forging notes by my mom. I mean, I was so bad. And it was all because I didn't have the tools to handle that rejection. I handled it poorly. And so I think we've all had that. And so when you couple the biologically wired, when you couple the fact that we have that society, and then now today, you add in social media, which is we should all look fabulous, look perfect, look at the Kardashians, they look awesome, you should too, what's wrong with you, don't be a loser. You combine all of that, and now it's like nobody wants to fail, nobody wants to get rejected, everybody wants to go on Instagram and be like, I started my business last Thursday and I'm already a 7-figure earner, it's amazing, and it's just not, it doesn't happen.
No, I think it's like the moment I launched my first high ticket business. So I'd had a business selling fitness it was £75 to £100 a month, which was like, it was quite, it was quite expensive for my town. And it was like, even asking for the first sale for that time, it was like pretty bold. I remember the first time I asked for like a £3,000 sale. And the guy opposite me said, I don't know what you're doing, man. This is crazy. No one's ever going to spend that much on personal training. He said, are you okay? Who you be seeking business advice from? I came away from that first meeting. I was like, oh my gosh, am I doing this right? Like, is this a good decision? Should I be charging this much? Yada, yada, yada. And I was like, and I think that it's when you're in your most vulnerable state as a person, starting a business or just doing something new in a venture, that you often get those no's, right? And I think that's where you most need that support. And I think that's what, I wish I would have, you always read the right book at the right time, but I wish I would have read that at the start of my sales journey, because I think I went through like lots of periods where I would try and make some sales, I would get loads of rejection, I would last so long, I could bear the pain for so long. And then I'd give up for a couple of weeks, lose momentum. Obviously, my pipeline would dry up, and then I'd start again. And that was like right at the start of my journey. Whereas now I just understand, and I see it in clients where, they get a couple of rejections, they can just about put up with it, and then they drop, and then they spend weeks licking their wounds, dries up, and they have to start it all again. And they stay in that cycle for sometimes even years, right? That's something that you help people with, because obviously they're going to have to overcome that at some point.
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, there's two things always going on with me in terms of helping people through that. One is I want to have empathy and be kind to people, because I think that, and the reason why I'm saying that is because I understand that we're not robots, we're emotional. And so sometimes you do need a break, right? And I like to say that pausing, digesting is not quitting. However, to your point, you can't lick your wounds for weeks at a time. I love that. It's such a great image, right? You see like a big lion and he's licking his paw from sticking it, getting a thorn stuck in it. And you do lose momentum, you lose everything. I mean, you're not in the groove. And so that's why one of the words that we've kind of latched onto with this Go for No methodology is the word reprogram. We really want to help people reprogram the way they think and feel about failure and rejection. And so there's two parts to this. The one part is the think part. And a lot of people read Go for No. You're such a great example. They read it and they just go like, oh my gosh, I get it. Stop fearing no. Stop avoiding no. Start hearing no. Be willing to hear no more often. Go, ask people that you wouldn't have asked. Follow up with the people that haven't gotten back to you. There's all these ways to apply it. But then there's also the feel people. And it's like, okay, but I can do that for a short period of time, but also it still feels bad. And there's not I can't say, well, here's the way to completely rewire your DNA. Like, I wish we were that good. If we were, we'd probably be billionaires, because I would have come up with some elixir that you could take and we could rewire people's genes and get that out. But we're still dealing with a brain that has not caught up to, our brains haven't even caught up to phones and social media and cars. I mean, we can barely process what's happening with AI. Like, everybody's losing it because our technology is going so fast and it's going so deep into wherever. So the biology and the feelings will always be there. And that's the thing that has to be coached to. And so one of the things I say to people is, you've got to ignore the butterflies and the sweating palms and the sinking feeling, like the feeling of dread that comes over you when you get rejected. All of that is your biology. So you've got to just kind of be aware of that and say, okay, I get it. That's just the biology. I've got to get beyond that, use my brain, and start thinking differently. So the think and feel is like a war at all times. You can change your thought process. That's pretty easy. The feeling process takes longer, and it really is about reprogramming it. It's about doing it often enough so that you can kind of numb yourself to rejection. That works for a lot of people. It certainly has for me, just in that when I talk about it and think about it and do it for so long, I think it's hilarious. Like, now I love no. I just love it. It becomes fun. But even that, though, Benjamin, even that, like the other day, I remember getting a no from, I got a no. I was doing this publicity summit, and I got a no from a podcaster that, actually, the funny part was, this wasn't even like it wasn't like Joe Rogan or something that I got a no from. I mean, to be honest, this was somebody who had a fairly new podcast, and she wrote me back and said no. And I actually I experienced like the feeling of the rejection, and I just went, oh yeah, that's that rejection feeling. There's no way for me to stop it. So the only thing I have to control that is my thought processes in that moment.
Yeah, I think that we get to this point sometimes where, especially in self-development, that we think that we can absolve ourselves from feeling certain feelings. It's like, oh, well, if I learn enough about this, I'm going to exonerate myself. That's the word I was looking for. If one day I'll be exonerated from feeling this. And it's like, especially with rejection and no, I think that's what I was actually digging for. Is like, is there a point in someone, or, especially in the work that you've done, where they've actually got to that point where they feel almost absolved of feeling like that, but actually that's almost impossible, right? It's like, you're not going to feel, you're never going to be exonerated from that.
Well, I think it is, but the more you do it, the better, the easier it gets, right? I mean, look at politicians. I mean, if you were Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, you have a million horrible stories written about you every day, both of them. And so at some point, you have to believe that these people just look at it and just like laugh. It's just like, that's an average Tuesday. If someone wrote a front page story and was like, Benjamin Owen is the worst person on the planet, you'd be like, what? This is horrible. Yeah. But if it happened all the time, you have no choice but to get used to it. So I think that's my point, is the frequency that you do it, the more that you put yourself out there and you go for no and you hear no and you experience it and you get used to the feelings and you realize, hey, these feelings are transitory. They pass. Yeah, I feel anxious. I feel fearful. I feel like a sense of dread because of all this rejection. And maybe I feel a little exhausted over it. But I'm going to do it again tomorrow. And the more I do it, the more it's just going to kind of roll off my back.
Yeah, it's funny actually, because if you listen to this, when I reached out to Andrea, so I reached out to Andrea on a platform she doesn't use that often, and told her a little bit about what I was trying, wanted to do the podcast, and I didn't hear back. And I was like, right, okay, is this Andrea Waltz making me go for no here? And so I had a couple of reach out, and actually it was really genuinely like, if Andrea doesn't use that platform that often. But I was like, it actually was a really interesting little experiment. I was like, actually, is this my moment to keep going until she tells me to go away? It's like, I was like, so it was really, that was my rejection experience. It's like, I was like, oh, am I creating this as rejection? Is this a test? Is this the right platform? I was like, so anyway, and I actually read a book by Alex Banayan called The Third Door. Have you read The Third Door?
Love it. We actually listened to the audiobook. Yeah, that was an awesome book.
Yeah, and like I love his work. His work is absolutely amazing. Like, you know, and the way that he goes to like the people outside of his sphere, and that's his no challenge. Like he goes for the no in the people that are like, you know, like he tries to interview the likes of Bill Gates,
Warren Buffett,
all that sort of stuff. And that was like a new challenge for me, because like sales was a challenge, but I got used to that. But then that was my bigger challenge, to go for the bolder no's. There's something you said there that I think that's really important, is that you build frequency with the no. And I think that is something that so many people don't get. And like going back to what I was saying before, like people get the no, they cool off, they have a long period of time where they don't get back into sales, they get out of the swing of things, and I think they lose a lot of confidence. And this is something that I've had it actually this year, is I had long periods of no's, and actual no's, like I don't have the money, I can't move forward. I had like 2 months where it was a real struggle. I was getting lots of no's, and I had to keep reminding myself not to confuse getting no's with being a bad coach. And like, is that something you can speak to? Because I think that so many people confuse sales rejection with how good they are as a professional.
Yeah, that's such a great point, and I rarely get asked that question, so I'm glad you brought that up. And well, it's one of the reasons why you can never look for validation of your idea or what you're doing, and at least from a validation point. I think what you learn after time, and this is something I coach people on in my groups all the time, is a lot of times they'll like send out a couple messages and then they'll go like, the message isn't working. And I was like, wait a minute, how many messages did you send out? Because you can't stop tweaking your message, changing up your email. You've sent out 9 messages. This is not statistically relevant. Like this, you know, and nobody's saying yes, everybody's saying no to it. So you got to look at those rejections as learning opportunities, and to try to see like, okay, what's working? Maybe, because I certainly have over the years had people who have gotten rejection after rejection after rejection, and it doesn't mean that anything is necessarily wrong with their product. It doesn't mean certainly that there's anything wrong with them, but let's look at, okay, where's the disconnect, and where is that no happening? Is it happening top of funnel, or is it happening after you have your first meeting? And now you're sharing the price and no one is taking the price. Okay, so are you talking to people who legitimately aren't right for that fee band, and you need to either get a different, you know, ideal persona in place before you go to that fee band, or you need to change the fee band? Like, you just have to be open to learning, I think, but the data has to be there. It can't be 7 messages. It can't be 12 emails. That's not enough. It's got to be hundreds before you go like, okay, this isn't working. But yeah, I like what you said. It is nothing about your skill as a coach or who you are as a person. And we have to be really careful that we don't let it become that. And even one of my favorite lines when it comes to taking no personally is, it's not about you even when it's about you. If you are an artist and you've got your paintings out for display at an art fair, and I see this all the time, Richard and I love walking art fairs, and I see this, you know, you see these artists, they've got their sculptures and their paintings and they're out there and they're meeting people, and people walk by and they say the most horrible, cruelest things, right? Again, going back to, you know, the criticism of politicians, they say like, oh my gosh, I would never buy that. I would never hang that in my house. Oh, you know, who would, you know, terrible things. And as an artist, you have to say like, even though this is my work and I built it with my own hands, that is about them and their preferences. And at the next booth, they may love that painting. And it has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with them. So we really have to work on depersonalizing that rejection.
Oh, that's so good. There's something you said there, and like it was probably the most profound thing in terms of sales assessment, or it's like where is the no happening in the funnel? I've never heard that before. Where is the no? Like, and then thinking back to some of my clients, they get no at the top of the funnel, and they think that it's not. They don't even get to the price, and it's like, actually, that's such a good question. Where is the no happening in the funnel? And I was like, that's like a. Sorry, just had a brain gasm. It's like it's such a profound, like, because I think that so many times in my experience with my offers is that I haven't even got people down to the price, and I've not even they've not given me no's or stuff like that, and it's been at the top of the funnel. Like it's like, and I'm like, oh yeah, we need to reduce the price, and I haven't even had clarification that it's a no on the price.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
And so, so maybe you got to look at and say, okay, let's keep going with the offer. Let's try to get enough data, right? Let's keep showing the offer and just see if maybe we tweak the persona or something, right? And see if we don't get some more testing so we can see if it is in fact really the price. So you've got to have the test, you've got to have numbers.
Wow. You can see it even on the podcast. We've gone into the bigger, wider concept of the no. We're getting down into the detail of looking at where the no's are happening. And Andrea, like when we talked at the start, we talked about this idea of testing the concept of going for no. And something that I thought was really, really powerful is that you actually do a challenge, which is called the Go for No 21-day challenge. I've stolen Andrea's concept and I've called it the Go for November. Okay.
Go for November. Yes. And so Benjamin. So I have to tell you one thing, one small change that's happening in November. It's a 7-day challenge.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. It's even a 7-day challenge. It's even better. And I will tell you that on the 21-day challenge, sometimes people can get a little exhausted because it's hardcore. It's about as hardcore. It's about as hardcore as you could get. Yeah.
I think that. So there you go. So there's something that, like, even if we talk through the podcast, is like, you need the frequency with no, you need the thinking behind the no, you need the guidance and the actual wisdom that you've gained. Like, I think that if this is something, if you've been listening to the podcast and you've listened and you like, do you know what? If I really transformed my relationship with rejection and no, and I learned how to do all these things, this could be the single biggest thing I think that you could do this year in terms of propelling your business forwards. And before we kind of talk a bit more about the challenge, tell us more about the results that you've seen when people have really come to you and got this message and embodied it and transformed. I'd love to hear about the results, Andrea.
Right. Like just success stories, right?
Yeah. Like what, like some of your fond memories of people just like, because I can imagine this has been very transformational for so many people.
Oh my gosh, so many people. And it's so fun to see. There's kind of two things. One is I think people come into the challenge and some of this people aren't gonna want to hear, but I'm gonna share it anyway. Okay. They have really high expectations for themselves. They're like, I want to achieve this number. I want to, in my business. But what happens is when they start taking the challenge, they realize that the actions that they're taking, the actual behaviors that they're doing are down here. They're at a much lower number. You can't do low number activity and expect to get a high number. There's just a total disconnect. So one of the things that transforms people the most, I think, is that they realize that if they really want to have exceptional numbers, they've got to put in the time and effort and work. That getting one no and going like, okay, I got my one. That if you've got really high goals that you want to achieve, that's not good enough. So you learn very quickly in the challenge what kind of game you want to play. That's the one thing. At whatever level you want to play it. And so we've had people get phenomenal results from really doubling down and going, I'm going to really use the tracking sheet. I'm going to go for no. I'm going to collect all my no's. And we see amazing results. And then but the most results that I see in the 21 days aren't so much numbers, but they're people who've transformed their thinking. They just realize that they've been self-sabotaging. They talk themselves out of going for things. They talk themselves out for follow-up. At the last challenge, it was really funny. This guy was talking, AJ, and he's just, nobody knows who you are, AJ. So if he ends up listening to this, he can't get mad. And this is during the challenge. And one of the things we encourage people to do is get business no's, but also get personal no's. So he happened to be at this work event, and he started chatting with this young woman next to him and chatting. And in his head, he starts thinking, I should go for no. I should go for no. I should ask for her number. I should ask for her number. And then he talks about it. And he's like, this is it. I can't, I've got to do something. I've got to take action. And he lets her walk away. He doesn't do anything. And he goes, I was starting to leave the event, and I walked over to this other area, and there she was. And he goes, this is it. This is the universe saying, this is my last ditch effort. I didn't do it when I had the opportunity. I talked myself out of it. So he did. He asked for her number, and he got it. He got a yes.
Oh, yes.
Point being, right? He knew he had to do it. Go for no. He's like, it popped up into my head. He's like, I know this is what I need to do. Even when he knew it, he still hesitated, but then he got the chance at the end, and he got her number. So I don't know what happened from there. This was last week. So people get trained. This is part of this reprogramming process. They get trained to look for the opportunities where they can ask. So this may be in a conversation where you're having like a meeting with a potential client, a prospect. Maybe it's just during the follow-up. This challenge is about the practice of learning how to ask courageously and face the no, and to stop self-sabotage. And so I've seen so many people have so many stories. I mean, everybody just gets so much out of the challenge, and it's hard to actually put into words because everybody's journey is so different, but their struggles are the same. They self-sabotage, they talk themselves out of it. They get exhausted from no easily. So one of the things that we're also always working towards is getting a routine, being consistent. You don't have to go for no for 5 hours every day. Just do a little bit, but you've got to do it every day, because then what happens is you think, oh, I'm going to sell all day on Tuesday. And then we all know what happens. You end up selling for like an hour, and then you don't sell for another week, right?
Yeah, while you were talking then, actually, I realized how profound the collective of like so many people going through the challenge together is as well. Because I think that's something that, like, not just going for no on your own, because actually when a load of people are, like, the collective goal is you going for no amongst other people, I think that's a big thing that I noticed with my sales team. So I had a sales team and I run a gym, and we'd all be in the consultation rooms dialing, and like there would be conversations, and collectively we were all collecting conversations and notes, and so the culture was a no. And I think so many people listening to this, like I work with a lot of solopreneurs, coaches, consultants who are sometimes on their own. And actually just being in an environment where the culture is, hey, I'm going for my nose, I'm going to collect some rejection, I'm going to go and experience this. It's like going into a workout where, like when you go to the workout, I do group workouts every single day. I look around and everyone else is hurting. I'm like, okay, let's keep going. It's like, so I think that's something that's really got a profound impact on a lot of people as well, I imagine, just being in a community of people just going for that no.
Everybody reports that. You're right. In fact, I had one woman named Cindy who says the same thing. She's like, I'm alone. She works from home. She cold calls all day long. That's what she does. And she's like, I wish I was in an office with hearing someone else call. Like, I just feel kind of isolated. And so just with our group, in the 21 days, we meet every week, but in the 7-day, we meet every morning. And so if you're in the UK, it'll be more in the afternoon, but still to get the calls, hear from other people, like you don't feel as alone. And it's funny that you brought up the workout. I didn't even think about like how accountable you are when you see everybody else working out hard in the gym and you're like, okay, I can do a couple more reps because the person next to me, like, I want to beat them.
Yeah, it's like even like because there was something about the summer months for a couple of people I was speaking to, and even my mentor, and I said, listen, like I've been prospecting, I've been reaching out, I've been doing everything that I know to do. I'd started a new business, I'd left another business, but I'd been doing a lot, and I hadn't really built my pipeline up. And anyway, just hearing my mentor saying, do you know how many sales we made, Ben? And he went 0. And I was like, wow, if he was struggling, and it kind of gave me, it didn't like make me feel that everything was okay and I had an excuse, but I was like, it just gave me that feeling like, okay, it's not just me that's struggling with this. And I think that gave me so much more like motivation and inspiration to keep going for those no's. And it literally, week later, 2 weeks later, it changed around. So I think, so what I'm going to be doing, I love Andrea's work and the book, and I found out that we could actually do a challenge. So I want to be promoting Andrea's Go for No challenge. All the information is in the podcast notes. So I'm going to put this out today. Andrea, going to get this out today ASAP. The challenge starts on what's the date?
November 13th.
November the 13th. Okay, so November 13th, we're going to be going for no's for 7 days. So I'll change my mind. It's no problem. I'm a total imperfectionist, by the way. So like that's I'm an iterator. It's all good. And then so 7 days, and all the information you need is on a page, which is on a link in the section for the podcast. Honestly, like just listening to Andrea, getting to work with Andrea for the seriously low cost. It's a big commitment. I think it's like big commitment in terms of energy and time, but at the same time, I feel it'll transform people's November. Like I really do. What do you want to share?
Absolutely. Well, so a couple things. One is when you sign up for the challenge, you get a little mini course. So even if you haven't read the book, you get put into the mini course that explains like what this challenge is about. What am I talking about in terms of asking? One of the modules is called, "Are you a good asker?" So you can kind of like learn like, how are you like when it comes to hearing the word no, right? And some nuances about Go for No. And when you sign up for the challenge, also you will be you get access to the portal and that mini course for like 3 months. So you can go back through, and also you'll be able to go back through and listen to all of the calls, all of the training calls. So 7 hours of Go for No stuff. And so if you like, even if there's a day that you can't make it or whatever, and so you can repeat, like literally do your own 7-day challenge again, repeat it for a couple times between, the challenge and maybe the end of the year, the beginning of next year. And I am completely convinced that it's transformational for your mindset, how you think and feel about no, which is really, it's part of that reprogramming process.
Yeah. Well, like even if I want to caveat this as well, even if you are not in the place to do the challenge, read the book. Like honestly, seriously, is like I'm a big fan of simple plans. If you are breaking into sales, if you're having a sales drought, if you are struggling with sales and you want a different approach and you've never read the book before, read the book. So simple yet so dynamic in how it will transform how you see your approach to your sales. So like honestly, it's like a really, really, it's like phenomenal investment, and it's not even a long book. It's like I remember, I think I listened to it like 4 or 5. Is it 4 or 5 hours? If that. On Audible?
No, yeah, it's like so the book's like 80 pages. So yeah, the audio book's like 2 hours.
Yeah, I remember it being super short. It's like super short. Yeah, okay, there you go. Because I remember I like consumed it in one walk, and I was like, oh right, okay, keep going. It was a long walk, by the way. Yeah. Andrea, just want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate you sharing the Go for No story. And if you've listened in to this team, head on over to the comments, and then you'll be able to get all Andrea's links anyway, so you can find her and find out more about what she does as well. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you on the next podcast.